Hello and welcome to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. Thank you very much for joining me today. So I decided to do a solo episode today, kind of off the plan, if you will, because I had a crazy day. It was one of those days where I reached some insight or some wisdom was delivered unto me. And I feel like it's important for me to share it with you before I forget. I mean, I will say that it was a great day. When I say I had some wisdom laid upon me, it was all good. And that's why I want to share it with you, because I feel like I really have to. And I started the day with all of the great Facebook and LinkedIn comments and likes and shares of my podcast launch, which was just the other day. And it was really humbling. It was a great experience. I was so happy to see so many people who I've been in touch with, and many who I haven't been in touch with in many years, sharing words of encouragement, but also saying how much they like what I've got to say. I just want to have good conversations with people and share things that are important to me. And if that resonates, fantastic. Keep listening. It just makes me feel like it's all worth it. It's quite humbling. And I am extremely grateful that you're taking the time to listen to me and to my guests. I hope you get a lot of value out of this show. Which brings me to the topic for today. You recall from my first episode, we talked about shitteration. The idea of going live and doing something that is basically crap. But with the understanding that it's going to get better. And, frankly, you have to start somewhere. But let's say that you've started something and that you're moving forward. But there's something gnawing at you, that, or you feel like maybe it's not in the right direction. Maybe this isn't quite the right thing. How do you recognize that you're going the wrong way, or that there's probably a better way? How do you know when it is time to pivot? I suppose that if you're lucky, it just comes to you. You recognize that you're probably living the definition of insanity. You're doing the same thing again and again, but expecting completely different results. But you have the mindfulness and the awareness and the self-awareness to say that about yourself. Oh, okay, geez, if I do this again, it's not going to go, or it's not going to be any different. So why do I keep banging my head up against this wall? I mean, so it takes a bit of self-awareness, but if you're lucky, I think then it's time to pivot. Maybe you're lucky enough that you have people who care about you and who care enough about you that they're going to be honest with you, and they tell you that it's time to make a change, or they make enough suggestions that you're like, okay, yeah, I think it's time to change tack, change direction. Thank you very much for your advice, et cetera, and so on. So I think those are probably the main two ways that a lot of people get to the point that they're ready to pivot. Yeah, it's not working out. I get that. Or somebody tells you so. Maybe the third way would be that, there's an external influence, or there's a sudden change that happens that forces you to make a pivot. Like, you suffer a huge setback for some reason. And one that's big enough to change your mind, and force you to rethink what is happening. And I suppose that could be something like, getting fired, or getting laid off, or God forbid, getting sick, or something, something that is huge, life altering, or just changes your path enough that you realize you got to do some things differently. So really great incentive to pivot there. And I guess the other thing that could happen is maybe you never know. Maybe you never know when you should pivot, and you continue down a path that's not going to work for you. there's really no way to know other than you're missing the signs or you're ignoring people. But there's no way to know, and until you either suffer abject failure or you get to a point where you complete something and on reflection, you understand that it didn't go the way you wanted to, and you should have pivoted. Maybe we call that regret. But I guess that's the fourth possible pathway, is that you don't pivot and things don't end well. Anyway, I think you get the idea. When things aren't going well, pivot, change. If you can see it, great. If you can't see it, count on what other people have to say. And if neither of those two things apply, well, good luck to you. You really need to understand whether or not you're going the right direction sooner rather than later. I bring this up, or this came to my mind, because of a conversation I had with my cousin this afternoon. He called me to talk to me about the podcast. He had just listened, and thankfully he liked it. And we just started talking about a few things. And also, over the years, I've been talking with Steve about social media. He is a personal injury attorney in Florida, in Orlando, and that is apparently the most competitive market for personal injury lawyers. I didn't really know that. I've been to Orlando many times. I suppose all the signs on the road probably should have been a hint that there are quite a few personal injury lawyers there. But my cousin Steve, he has a firm from Page and Eichenblatt. They've been around for a long time. It's a highly competitive environment. And he is, working on ways to use social media and marketing techniques to try to capture some leads and some market share. The thing is that the activities that they've been doing, they've been paying for, haven't been delivering on the results that they were looking for. This is not an uncommon thing. People often engage in marketing activities that don't yield any results. And, for one reason or another, they decide to keep giving it a try, keep going forward. Maybe it's the relationship with the agency. Maybe it's the fact that you have a marketing manager who is really good at convincing you to keep waiting. Whatever the reason is, there's a reluctance often to change direction or to doubt that what you're doing isn't going to work. But after talking with Steve, months go by. You spend a lot of money on various tactics. You spend a lot of money on certain types of advertising, spend a lot of money on search engine optimization, search engine marketing, spending money on content creation. Some of these things are your normal standard tools in the toolkit for a marketer, but he's spending a lot of money on it. And after months and months and months, 0 leads from these programs, right? Still getting their pipeline in traditional ways, but 0 new leads from these programs. So Steve called me and we were talking about it, and it brought to mind a piece I read recently by Mark Schaefer. And I mentioned Mark a lot on my podcasts so far. In 4 episodes, I've probably talked about him 4 times. But Mark wrote a piece about specifically about SEO, and it got me to thinking about my cousin Steve's situation. Mark's point, one of the many points he makes, but Mark's point was that it just didn't make sense to try to win the SEO game, right? It didn't make sense to try to win the SEO game if you are a small, medium business trying to go up against, the Titans. This is not a David and Goliath situation. That's not the way Google works. The little guy is not going to win. It's very, very unlikely in SEO. So rather than focus so much money and attention on SEO, and even to a degree of search engine marketing, where you're paying for placement in the search engines, because you can't outbid people with 10x or 100x the budget that you have. Rather than think of SEO and SEM as something that you should be doing, get them out of your mind. Right? Get them out of your mind. Focus on creating quality work, quality content that Google rewards anyway, with with good search results when it's relevant and when it's generally good content that your audiences are in tune to. So focus on creating the good content, but forget about spending all this money on tweaks to your SEO or on advertising for search engine marketing. And when I mentioned this to Steve, when we started talking about it, it was like a light went on. I mean, I was on the phone with him, so I couldn't see any actual lights go on, but it sounded like he had one of those kind of epiphanies. It's his budget after all. He runs the firm with his partner, Greg Page. They run this firm together, and spending on marketing is basically coming out of their pockets. It's not like a mega corporation or some of the competitors in the area that have, hundreds of millions of dollars in combined revenues that can basically saturate the advertising space. So every penny counts. And for that reason, why should he be focusing on something he's not going to win? So what does that mean? It means he's got to pivot. I mean, maybe the first thing is to stop paying people to give you bad advice. That's one thing. But in general, what can he be thinking about instead of spending all this money on search engine marketing and SEO where they're not going to win? They'd have to pivot to something that's a little bit more unconventional, something that traditional law firms aren't necessarily doing. I recommended that he pick up a book called Fizz by Ted Wright, whose agency, I think the agency is also called Fizz, specialists in word of mouth marketing. Maybe there's some unconventional campaigns that can be designed for Steve. Maybe should even just be shopping around for new agencies. Another great book came out that could turn all this content marketing on its head. Matthew Sweezy's The Context Marketing Revolution. If you haven't read it, I recommend it, but I have to tell you, I recommend it from basically the first 25 pages because that's as far as I've gotten so far. But looking at the way that AI is kind of almost interfering, but sort of controlling and interfering in the content distribution process. How do you know what you write or what you create is going to get to the people that it needs to get to? There are so many more factors than just relevance and just knowing where the targets are. You now have to contend with, the platform's AI that serves up content in ways that, most of us just straight up don't understand. And, Steve's a great writer, and he's been writing for years. So as it turns out, he's got lots of existing content, and he's got a sharp legal mind. He's a great storyteller. So, why not get content ready for multiple audiences? Put together an ebook from his articles or organize videos, maybe even start a podcast, Steve, something like that. Or, just tie it all together under a lead generation program powered by something like ClickFunnels, or some kind of other, funnel optimization platform. Anyway, the point is that once we really decided that it's time to pivot, the ideas started to flow, the options started to become visible. And I could feel Steve's excitement, just in considering the fact that, the direction that he was going or the direction that their firm is going isn't the only direction. There's plenty of other opportunities, plenty of other chances. All you got to do is pivot. I mean, I say that in a flippant way. It's not all you got to do, but, pivoting can be a really good thing. So, I got off the phone and I felt really good about helping out my cousin. And, I'm sure that I'll be talking to him more about, how his firm is doing and what kind of tactics they're trying out. Maybe I'll even have him on the podcast. We could talk about it a little bit more. But I really felt good about that and about the idea that, maybe just all you need to do is shift direction a little bit and see a different angle, see the world from a different angle. And that is what was kind of on my mind as I went into my next call. I'm working on a book project actually, because it's not really solidified into anything resembling a book yet, but I've made the commitment to myself to write a book. And now I suppose that I verbalized it here, I've made a commitment to you too. So anyway, I'm working on a book, and I've joined a group of writers. And it's kind of like a mastermind group, and we're working on this together. There's some accountability in place. we have these conversations every Sunday. And anyway, this is just like the third week of the program. So I've been waking up every morning and trying to write a little bit every day. And, recently I've stalled. I will tell you, that it is not easy to wake up earlier and devote a certain amount of time to just sitting down, looking at a screen and writing, especially when you know that in a couple hours time, you're going to actually have to be on the clock for your real job, which I love, by the way, but you have to be out, beyond for that. And this is a complete, a side project at this point. So when I don't get a lot done in an hour, I get frustrated. I feel really frustrated with myself. So I was talking about this with my group today. It was like, as I talked about the fact that I'm only putting down a couple hundred words a day, I just realized that I still need to find the heart and the soul of my work. Listening to the other guys on the call, they're very passionate about what they're writing about. And I think that was the element that was missing from me is that I started to write. When I started out, I was pretty passionate for like the first 1,000 words. And then after that, I wasn't sure where it was going. And it's been 200 words here, 300 words there. And, I think that listening to them today, I realized that's what's missing. Passion. I suppose I need a passion pivot, if that's a thing. If not a thing, it is now. I have to make the passion pivot, change my direction so that I can actually get in touch with the emotions and the heart and the soul that can connect what I write to my potential audiences. And after I had that revelation, I started to feel really excited about the project again. It's getting up in the morning every day, like I said, is not the easiest thing, but it's a lot better when you're motivated and you have something to look forward to. And I know that ultimately the words on the page are going to be valuable. But now that I think I'm starting to unlock this passion point, I think it'll be even better for my potential readers. And, I'm pretty excited about the project. I'll let you know how it goes during the course of these podcasts. So anyway, I think the takeaway here is that just need to embrace the pivot, or at least keep it as an option, right? Just keep thinking that, I could pivot at any time. Get out of your own way. Sometimes I think it's your own thinking that is going to stop you from change. Some people may call it stubbornness, short-sightedness. Maybe it's just the fact that you're not aware of the direction you're in, or you just can't see the forest through the trees. Whatever it is, but you need to get out of your own way sometimes, and let the results speak for themselves. Let the results speak in metrics. Let them speak in results and numbers, and listen to what they have to say. When you're doing something for 6 months and there are 0 results, 0 is a pretty loud number. So, if somebody said to me, I really appreciate the marketing program that we've been running. The campaign is fantastic. I love the way it looks. We've been doing it for 6 months. You have 0 leads and 0 possibility for new business from this campaign that you just had, but it looks good. I think I'd be a little bit upset, and I think I'd be ready to pivot. So listen to the numbers, listen to the results. And the last thing that today reminded me of, and that this whole pivot idea reminds me of, is something that I learned years ago from a fellow I worked with who used to be a journalist, an editor for a major top tier news organization. I was writing a piece for our internal corporate blog at the time, and I went to this guy for advice and for some feedback. And the first thing he did is he took out a red pen. He looked at me. He said, "Dan, don't take this the wrong way, but the first thing you got to do is you have to be comfortable. Don't be afraid to kill your babies. Don't be afraid to kill your babies." Now I know it's a terrible expression, but it's totally true. When you're a writer, when you're a creator, the things that you create are akin to your children. They come out of your heart and soul sometimes. And even if it's just a business blog, you might be really attached to it. Luckily, I didn't have that problem. I was very happy to make some changes to whatever we were working on. I didn't look at it that way, but still, as a piece of advice, it's really critical that you have to understand you can't be afraid to kill what's most precious to you if it is not working. For something you're writing or working on for a project and so on. So maybe terrible words, don't kill your babies might be terrible words, but I think I'll stick with it. It's worked so far. So on that note, once again, I really appreciate all the great comments and encouragement I've gotten so far for this podcast. And I am looking forward to some of the episodes I've got coming up. I already have some great people lined up to have some great discussions. And when something occurs to me, when I have an idea or an experience that I think I really need to share, I'll drop in a solo episode like this one. It's going to be an adventure. What can I say? And I'm really glad that you are going on it with me. So thank you very much again, and I'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks again for listening.